From racing the streets to racing through the cosmos, here's your look at the brand new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse McFarlane Collector's Edition Green Lantern Corps member Simon Baz. As a Muslim growing up in Michigan, Simon Baz was often the target of bigotry. After he lost his job at an automotive plant, Simon started stealing cars to make ends meet. One night, he stole a van and discovered a ticking bomb inside the vehicle. After a high-speed chase, he was taken into custody and suspected as a terrorist. Amid harsh interrogation by federal agents, a power ring sought Baz out, conferring on him the abilities and responsibilities of a Green Lantern. A reluctant superhero, Baz considered the selection a mistake, but sought to do his best to help people. A little confusion by the fusion, just before, of course, we get a closer look at the new Green Lantern member Simon Baz. The tape measure first going to tell us that the figure stands at 7 inches in height, or Baz is going to be about 18 centimeters tall. I'd like to go ahead and thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of new Simon Baz that we could have a look at this review. Now, if you are confused with what exactly fused, it was actually, in fact, Hal Jordan and Sinestro's rings that fused together. And that amalgamation of a ring is the thing that sought out Simon Baz. Speaking of Jordan, and speaking of Sinestro, let's bring those in right now. Sinestro has a little bit more of a modern spin on the suit, whereas Hal Jordan's sort of stuck in the Silver Age. He's about the same size, I would say, as Hal Jordan. He seems like he's a little bit shorter, though, than Sinestro. Bringing other examples of the Green Lantern Corps in right now. Here's what the figure looks like with John Stewart and the recent addition to my collection, Tomar Ray. The Simon Baz that we're going to be looking at in this review has the black outfit with the green accents. There is also as well a Platinum Edition release of Baz that's going to have instead the white boots and the white accents in his suit instead. We're going to be looking at him in an upcoming review. In the meantime, though, back to the accessories that come included with Simon. First, the figure does have a trading card. Trading card, first of all, has a really nice image on the front of Simon Baz. Of course, sporting his power ring. Sported also on the side of the card as well, it says McFarlane Collector's Edition. If you look at the back of the card, as I've already stated his name several times already, his real name, Simon Baz. Funny, though, enough that it's on the card, but it's nowhere on the packaging. The packaging only just listed as Green Lantern. That's it. I don't know why they didn't take the time to put Simon Baz on that. There's also quite a substantial read-up. You can pause, you can read it for yourself, but technically, though, I have already beaten you to it. I have read it at the beginning of this review. No, it's the least I can do. No need to thank me. No need to thank me. Let's put it off to the side. Stop that. The figure also comes included with a display stand. Some frills now get added to the McFarlane release, the collector's editions, because they now have a silver DC logo instead of just the black. There's a peg to the far side that, of course, can plug into either of the boots of Simon Baz. You have to choose one because you only get one peg, unless you want to use 2 stands, and that would just be ridiculous. Let's move that off to the side. Now, he is a lantern after all, so of course it would be fitting that he does have one. It's not, though, the exact same lantern as the one that we got with Abansor or Tomar Ray's. His actually has a larger opening on the top, and it's a completely different mold. I do like that each of the lanterns have unique lanterns, that they don't have to have the exact same mold cast again. Now, both of these are actually made of more of a translucent, kind of gummier green plastic. Because they're always illuminated, these are power lanterns and all. I think it makes more sense that they're using a translucent plastic and not a matte green plastic instead. Of course, you can take the lantern fit into his existing hand. He only has, though, one gripping hand. That's the only downside, because the figure doesn't also have any other swappable hands. It leaves your choices pretty low, like you're only really given the option of having the figure displayed with the lantern on this side. This other hand is going to be doing a lot of the work, though. It's going to be accommodating pretty much all the accessories that... Well, I shouldn't say all the accessories. The hammer is still going to be something that's going to go on this hand. Speaking of the hammer, seeing as we were talking about that, if you wish to drop the hammer, the figure does have one. You don't have to worry that's going to be hurting anybody either, because the actual hammer is made of that same gummy kind of, translucent green plastic. You can kind of see really how gummy it actually is by how much bend there is. Now, unfortunately, though, because they're using translucent green plastic, you can kind of see like the makings of the way that the hammer was put together. It seems almost as if like the top of the head of the hammer is actually 2 halves that were kind of sandwiched together, as opposed to casting this entire thing all in one mold. It doesn't actually look like it's a separate piece from the rest of the handle of the hammer. Nice little accessory, though. We don't tend to get things like this. Nor do we also get things like this. The figure does also come included with like a gauntlet. It almost looks like the Infinity Gauntlet. Cast again in translucent green plastic. It also comes with a drill bit hand accessory as well. Now, both of those will accommodate the hand that's on this side. In case you are curious, though, I did want to bring in, let's bring in Hal Jordan for this. If you did technically want to use these, you have to use a lantern, though, that has a pretty small hand. John Stewart's isn't going to fit, and I've noticed also as well, like Tomar Ray. I'm going to bring in Tomar Ray here. If you try to get, for example, that and fit it around his hand, it just isn't going to fit. You can see the hand is way too big. And yet, though, Hal Jordan, don't tell him he's got small hands, whatever you do. His hand seems to be just the right size. If you want to use that as well with him, you can. It is one of the things, though, I've noticed with Simon here is that his hand is really small. Let's go ahead and actually just take the lantern out of his other hand. I mean, if you look at this hand and you look at this hand here, it almost seems like they belong from two completely different figures. The hand really is a little bit laughably small, but it has to be small that size because, of course, it has to be able to fit the gauntlet. And it fits really well. I mean, like, I don't feel like I have to force that onto his forearm. It stays pretty good. Of course, if you want to do that also as well with his drill bit attachment, that just fits. This one you have to fight a little bit harder, though, to get around his hand, but it just plugs in place like that. Ideally, though, I would have liked if they could have made the hand just a little bit bigger, so that you could have used then these accessories with other Green Lanterns, not just Hal Jordan alone. Because they're also using the translucency of this, it looks like they actually glow. Nice little touch there. So let's remove that, put that off to the side. And then, of course, the one last thing that comes included with Simon Baz is the fact he has swappable faceplates. This is something that was kind of introduced, at least to this channel, I believe, with the Huntress review we just looked at earlier in this week. But now it seems to be a common trend that McFarlane is doing this. A cost-saving measure. I mean, obviously, it's a lot easier than to tool brand new solid heads. Instead, they give us swappable faceplates. So if you want to have different expressions, but obviously it's going to be the exact same head, why do all of this when you can just do this part instead? Now, of course, he does have the grimmest face defaulted out of the packaging. He has a neutral expression as well. Or, if you also want this one, he's got a smiling face. I think if given the choice, I mean, I'm now having the option of being able to put this on my shelf, my choice probably would be to go with this head sculpt, because I like the smiling expression a little bit more. Changing out the faces is super easy. You're just going to kind of get your finger on there. Kind of even helps if you kind of pull it from the chin. And removing that looks actually kind of interesting because it looks like you can still see a face, a nose. It looks a little bit like the Shadow Thief. Anyways, let's go ahead and just take the head, pop that back in place. You really want to make sure that you put enough pressure against that. This has happened a couple of times, obviously, when we looked at the Huntress. I don't want this to happen again. When you're moving the head, sometimes it may periodically remove the faceplate. You just have to go and just retrieve the person's face. Talk about real face-off. Detail-wise, though, for the mask, I really like the way that this one looks. Not only do you have the darker green here, but you got some nice outline, brighter green all around this. The green carries its merry little way down. Kind of gives us very much a Tron-looking Green Lantern. It's actually one of my favorite modern-looking Green Lantern suits. It's different, but it still keeps kind of the core idea of what a Green Lantern suit would be. He's short-sleeved, though, this time around. Whereas most of the Green Lanterns tend to have long sleeves. But again, like some really decent paint. The only problem with that, though, is that the way they've done these socketed cup areas, this is basically not there necessarily for articulation, but just to kind of conceal the joint. It does, though, unfortunately break up what would be a continued line across. So it starts and goes all the way to about here, and then it has to stop abruptly to get across this point, and it continues its way here. I feel, if anything, that instead of doing it in green, I know, obviously, if it looks, I mean, if you have the arms down, that I can see why they did it the way that they did, so that it looks a seamless line. But the moment you move his arm up, though, it's going to break that illusion. Colors overall, for the most part, look really good. I like the look of the Green Lantern symbol there on the front. This is actually painted. It's not raised from the rest of his body. So my guess is they're doing that probably because they can then use the body again for other figures. From a body standpoint, he's got a good wide build to him. I would really like to see this mold, if it hasn't been used already, released for other DC Multiverse figures down the road. For the rest of the figure, it's generally all black for his suit. I mean, obviously, he does have green boots down below here as well. Very, very similar style of boots, in fact, to Hal Jordan. We'll just bring those in so you guys can see. I mean, in fact, looking at them, I would not be surprised at all to say that it probably is the exact same leg sculpt, maybe. Maybe he's got a little bit of a bigger knee, but it looks like it's similar thighs and similar lower legs, that they probably used the same for Green Lantern Hal Jordan. Now, for the figure's articulation, going back to Simon's head, the head rotates all the way around. It looks up really high and looks down really low. You can also rock it back and forth as well. The upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. The lower abdomen is also the same. The arms rotate all the way around on this side too. You can hinge the arms out beyond the point of 90 degrees. He has a swivel there at the bicep, a double hinge on the elbow, and can't help but also point out the fact he does also have the marking there on his arm as well. He does have the Green Lantern ring, can't overlook that either, and the hands do rotate all the way around. Now for Simon's legs, they split out, once again relying on a ball ratcheted joint on the inside. You can take the legs and move forward, move them back. Swivel at the top of the thigh, double hinge, of course, on the knees. There's no articulation here for the boot. I don't think he necessarily needs it either. Upper torso or upper ankle pivot, an ankle rocker there as well. And the figure does also have, like all the usual figures, they have toe articulation. So if you're one that gets excited for toe articulation, this guy's got it as well. All in all, like nice looking figure. If not for maybe the fact that his one little hand, and it is a pretty tiny looking hand. It has to be there, obviously, just so to accommodate the idea that he's got these extra accessories that can go over top of it. Those same accessories too. One of the figures of the Green Lantern that I noticed had a very similar small hand was Hal Jordan. So again, you can. This one's a little bit tighter, but you can get this also around. Maybe even like the gauntlet works the best. With Hal Jordan, you can get that on him as well. So if he wants to get a power punch, you can do that too. Lots of cool accessories go along with Simon Baz here. The thing that's fun also about this figure is he's also one of those figures that gets a swappable faceplate. I mean, it seems to be gone the day now where we have to get like several heads. I mean, that's more expensive, obviously, for Todd and his team to produce. Creating faceplates gets still the same job across. I mean, obviously, instead of having to replace an entire head, I mean, it's so much easier for a collector as well just to remove faceplates. And the fact that Simon Baz has 3 of them is a nice touch on Todd's part. Wrapping up now the review for Simon, I've got the character displayed with the drill bit hand on one side and the hammer in the other. Just in case you are also curious as well, the Platinum Edition of Simon Baz is going to have the exact same accessories. So the only thing that's really changed is cosmetic between the two characters. The regular release of Simon is going to have the green accents on the black suit. The Platinum Edition is going to have the white accents. I think really the green one is the one that fits better, I feel, for my collection, but of course we will be looking at the Platinum Edition of Simon Baz in an upcoming review. Accessories are good. Unfortunately, though, with the accessories, at least 2 of them, it does result in the character having really a small hand on one side, just so it fits the drill bit hand properly, and of course the gauntlet. Now, the gauntlet worked a little bit better with Hal Jordan. I still kind of struggled a little bit to get the drill on there. I really wish that they could have made, though, the accessories and the hand of Simon just a little bit bigger, so then I could share around all the accessories. This guy gets some pretty cool ones. I'd like to be able, though, to be able to share those with the other Green Lanterns I have on my shelf currently. Paint is done nicely here on Simon. He's got some really cool looking neon green outlining. I mean, it does break up a little bit the moment you start to move his arm. If you have his arms draped to his side and parallel to his body, then you can see why they did it the way that they did. Paint on the face is good, whether you use this face sculpt with a smiling expression or the other two. Again, it's really cool now that we're getting figures that have swappable faceplates. From speaking as somebody that had to struggle, especially when we were looking at Tomar Ray and Abin Sur's body, remember, well, of course, in that review, popping off the head every single time resulted in usually the ball peg going along with it. This makes things so much easier. Obviously, for the coloring of Tomar Ray and Abin Sur, it would have never worked to have swappable faces, but it works very well with a character like Simon Baz. What do you guys think of the character? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have you had the chance to pick up this one or the Platinum Edition of Baz? A big thank you again to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample that we can have a look at this review. If you guys did enjoy this video, do it a solid. Throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Judging by the way that the calendar is, too, we got a few more days left of the week, and there will be more McFarlane Toys reviews all coming your way for the rest of this week, so making sure you're coming back to this channel. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.